Trucker Dump, episode 194. In this week's news, Knight-Swift buys yet another large carrier, daylight savings time is being debated in Congress for the millionth time, and a congressman calls the Secretary of Labor nominee the worst choice. We'll find out why. We'll discuss a new technology that could possibly give truckers priority at stoplights. A safety coalition calls for big safety changes. We'll discuss what happens to a tire when it finally dies. I'll tell you about lots of new truck stops opening. Better get your shot glass out. We'll talk about what possibly might be the world's tiniest trucker, and it appears that the public wants more truck parking, just not anywhere near their house. All that and more news. Plus, in the listener feedback segment, you weigh in on truckers wanting praise above all else. We'll learn more about how these best fleets lists work. I knew there was something fishy going on there. And one listener wants to talk about a few things. First, how stupid parking on a shoulder is. Secondly, his tolerance level for breakdowns. And lastly, of course, he wants to take a shot at me for making a bad guess at what CBP stands for. And sadly, we'll follow that up with a bummer of a story to end on a rare sad note. But it's something that needs to be said, so please stay tuned. So without further ado, let's get this baby rolling.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
Hey, Trucker Dumpers, welcome back after a week's hiatus. Yeah, that was a really weird week I just got off of. It started out with some relatives that we haven't seen in a really long time, including their son, who is Evil Overlord's cousin, and hadn't seen him in probably 15 years, I guess. I think the last time I saw him, I was carrying him around by his ankles upside down through the house. So that tells you how long ago it is. Now the dude's got a full beard. I don't know what it is with all the young people in my life, but everybody's got a beard now, except for my youngest nephew, Joel, I guess. But Jared and Jacob both have full beards. These beards. What's up with these beards these days? Anyway, yeah, like I said, weird week. So started out with them in town. I took Monday night off work for a rare thing that does never happens for me. I work pretty much all the time, but the Evil Overlord convinced me to take a sick day, so I did that. And then the second day, I had a really short, weird run and ended up back at home. So back at home, I'm not going to work on the podcast, of course, especially when the last year of Destiny 2 just came out. I mean, Lightfall's just sitting there waiting on me. You think I'm working on the podcast? Not. So next couple of days, I just were weird. I got in odd hours, and then I finally thought I was going to get around to recording on a Friday, which I don't like to put it off to the last second, but I often do anyway. And I just thought, well, I'll do it on Friday. Well, I get to the hotel, and again, weird. I sit there for 2 hours waiting on a hotel room to be cleaned, and that rarely happens. And so, of course, by the time I get to the room, I'm thinking, well, I could record a podcast or I could sleep. Guess which one of those won the argument? Yeah. So anyway, that is why I didn't get an episode last week. I'm sure it broke all of your hearts, and you're off in a corner, of the shower with the cold water running on you, and you're weeping hysterically. It's okay. I'm back. So, who's the nerd, you ask? In case you're new to the show, my name is Todd McCann. Yes, I'm a big, giant dumbass. Anybody can tell you that who's listened to the podcast for years. As one listener put it, this guy really just likes to hear his voice. Yeah, well, I don't like my voice, but I do like to hear myself talk. So, apparently you do too if you're here. Hopefully you'll stick around if you're new. Anyway, I am a 25-year trucker. Most of that was over the road, but in the last 4 years or so, I've been an LTL driver. That's less than truckload. And I'm loving that quite a bit. Hopefully, I will be able to continue to do that. Well, I've got some weird things going on at work, so we will see about that. I have also written a couple of ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. Trucking Life includes a 9.25-hour audiobook with it. You can get both those books individually at Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, anywhere you get your not your audiobooks, your ebooks, or if you want to get a discount on them, you can get 25% off by going to abouttruckdriving.com and buying the ebook combo pack. You'll get both of those books for $14.98. What a bargain. So enough about that. Hey, I need your help. Something weird happened to me this week, and it took me a little while to figure it out, but it ends up being a really simple fix, of course. So anyway, here's what happened. I'm taking a break at one of our terminals, waiting on a load. It was about 3.5 hours long. I was off duty, so according to the logs, I can use that to extend my 14 hours. We've talked about that in the past. So, if I take 3.5 hours off duty, I can tack that 3.5 hours on at the end of my shift and, extend that out to basically a 17.5 hour day. Now, the whole idea of this, of course, is so truckers have more flexibility and they can, stop and take breaks when they need to avoid traffic or whatever the case may be. And then they can still get a full day's work and not be shorted pay. The idea is, you want to be safe, but you don't want to be shorted pay for doing that. So that's what I was doing. So anyway, I finished a 3.5 hour break. I go back out to the truck. I hit the on duty to get ready to take off. And it doesn't give me my time back. And I'm like, that's weird. It always has before. Like it won't do it when it's off duty. It won't show you anything. But as soon as you go on duty or you start driving, it'll just pop it up and it'll just add that time to your 14 hours. But it didn't do it, like I said. So I thought, well, that's weird. So I go back inside. I look in the computer in the terminal, and we've got like a little e-log screen up there, and you can type in your number and look at your hours of service and see what's going on there. And it showed me that I had those hours, but my ELD itself did not show it. So I'm like, what is going on here? So I call the e-log department. They assure me that I have all those hours back. So I tell them, I don't know why my ELD's not showing that. They didn't know why either. So I just drove. And I thought, well, maybe it'll fix itself when it goes to the drive line or whatever. So anyway, I going from St. Louis and I get over to Kansas City. And before I even get there, like an hour before I get there, boom, everything, it was counting down the whole time. I knew it was coming, but everything went red, 14-hour violation. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think I'll get in trouble for this because, I called the e-log department. They said I was good. I looked on the computer. It said I was good. So I thought it's just my e-log malfunctioning. Now, this happened again in a couple of days, about a 2.5 hour break, I think it was. And it happened again. And I got flagged again for a 14-hour violation. And again, I thought I'm in the clear. Nobody's going to say anything about this because they're not going to see it. They're going to see what's on the computer, not what's on my ELD. Wrong. I get a call from my terminal manager just a couple of days ago, and of course he wakes me up in the middle of sleep and wonders why I'm sleeping at noon. Hello, I'm a night driver. Durr. But anyway, he says, hey, I show you driving over your 14 hours 2 days last week. And I was like, yeah. Well, and I explained the situation. I said, it's a bug in the software. Something's going on. I know the rules. And he didn't really want to hear any of that. He just wanted to get me off the phone. He said, yeah, okay, well, we've talked about the 14-hour rule, so you understand that. And that's all I really needed. And I said, no, wait a second. We talked about the 14-hour rule, but I already know the 14-hour rule. I know it. And I had, told my e-log department that I knew what the rule was and I knew how to use it and everything. I knew how to use that split sleeper berth thing, to utilize those hours. But like I said, he didn't really care. He just wanted to get rid of me. So anyway, after I got this call, I thought, okay, I better go straighten this up with the e-log department. So I called to report this bug, and the guy was completely clueless. And come to find out, the number I was calling was actually just the help desk. They can do little e-log things, but they elevated it up to the actual e-log person. Now, he called me back again. I'm trying to sleep. He calls me back like an hour later. And I know you're thinking, why don't you turn your phone off? Well, because my company uses the phone sometimes to call us and give us our work call. That's why it's on. So please don't call me in the middle of the day. If you have my number, please, because I will wake up and hear it. Anyway, the actual e-log guy calls me, and we get into an argument about the 14-hour rule. I say you can extend it. He says you cannot, which is disturbing to me that our e-log guy doesn't even know that you can extend a 14-hour day. I assured him he was wrong in the nicest way possible. But I said, listen, let's not argue about this anymore. I know the rules, and I know what it's supposed to do, and the e-log has always done this before, and it's never flagged me for it. So either there's two options here. Either the company knows they're doing this wrong and they're allowing it, which is bad, or they don't know that it's wrong and it's still allowing me to do it. So either way, I'm in the clear. That's the way I look at it. So anyway, I said, I don't really need your help with the rules. I need your help figuring out why my device will not sync with the computer back, what's showing on your computer. And we finally get around to, calming down a little bit because it was quite a heated argument. And he didn't know what was going on. So he was like, well, I'll send a message off to the safety department. We're going to try to figure this out. And in the meantime, we had talked about whether or not, and here's the crux of the matter and what I need your help for. Long way to get around to it. I realize that. But I drive a day cab. Some of you may have picked that up when I said it was the split sleeper berth that we were talking about, and I drive a day cab. Obviously, I don't have a sleeper berth in my truck. So when this rule first came around in 2020, I told everybody that I work with, hey, we're not going to be able to use this because we don't have a sleeper berth. But when the new software rolled out, guess what? We were able to do it. Now, I talked to an LTL guy, I don't remember where, like online, or I don't remember, Facebook or whatever. Anyway, I was like, how's this working? And he said the way he figures it is that they are considering that 7-hour sleeper berth, the part of the split, to be in the sleepers. Fine, that's the way it's written. But since we're in a hotel, or maybe a day cab driver sleeps at home every day, that would still count as that part of the break. Now, I don't know about that, and that's what I told the e-log guy. I was like, yeah, I don't even know if we're supposed to be doing this. And so he was going to check with his e-log department. I have not heard back on that. When I do, I will let you know. But anyway, I wasn't getting an answer there. So I called OmniTrax. Now, of course, the guy I got a hold of didn't know anything about it, so he bumped it up to another guy. And again, I woke up a little bit later. I am thankful, though, everybody called back quickly, but it did keep waking me up. Yeah. Anyway, this guy actually knew what he was talking about. First off, he knew about the 14-hour extension. He knew how that worked. He knew the device would let you do it, and he knew exactly where the setting was. Yes, all this was a setting in my device. That's all it was. I didn't even know this setting existed because it always just gave me the time back automatically. But he said, well, sometimes when you get a software update, which is when this all happened, when it all started, he said sometimes it just doesn't put the preference back the way it's supposed to. So he went in just a few taps and said, there it is, enable split sleeper berth. And I was like, son of a... That's all it was. So I clicked the little button, confirmed, and guess what? On my log itself, it said... The next screen said 14 violation removed. And I was like, there you go. That's all it took. So I'm telling you all of this just to ask you the question. Is anybody out there understand how it is that a day cab driver can use the split sleeper berth option? For the record, I did call my e-log guy back the next day who didn't even know about the 14-hour rule, and I had some links prepared for him to send them to him because I like to prove that I'm right about stuff. Who doesn't? Especially, he is a safety guy, so you'd think he'd want to know this stuff. So anyway, that's the first thing I'm asking him. I said, hey, do you have a chance to look up that 14-hour extension thing? And he said, yes, you were right. He said, and actually the wording in it is kind of weird. Sometimes it mentions sleeper berth. Sometimes it just mentions 2 rest periods. So again, he's got that going up to the honchos at the safety department, and they'll have a look at it. But honestly, I don't know if I'm going to take the word for it because I've had my safety department, my e-log department, tell me, a road driver, that when I'm low on hours, I should take a big day and take the 16-hour day. And I'm like, hello, I can't do that unless I return back to the same terminal every day. That's for bid drivers, people who return home every day, only for them. You got your safety department telling you, really? Your safety department's giving you wrong information. And I believe a long time ago I talked about a story where I was parked on the side of the road and I didn't know what to do. I was flustered. I had trucks and cars going on both sides of me, and I was freaked out and a little out of sorts, and I called the dispatch, and they didn't know what to tell me. I said, well, I need to use off-duty personal conveyance. They said, you can't do that. And I said, what else do I have an option? Well, I don't know, but you can't use personal conveyance. So here I am stuck, and I said, well, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to use it because I don't know anything else to do. Well, come to find out, I should have used the adverse driving condition, which does allow for things that are unexpected, which it was a wreck or construction. I don't remember which one it was, but it was something that was unexpected. I could not have foreseen it. And in those conditions, you can use the adverse driving condition. That would have got me out of it. But again, dispatch didn't tell me how to do that. Hindsight, I knew that. I knew the adverse driving condition, but like I said, when you got trucks and cars flying around you at 55 mile an hour, you are not really thinking clearly. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, like I said, let's get back to what I'm telling you all this for. I'm just curious if anybody knows how it is that a day cab driver can do this split sleeper berth thing and it be legal. Let me know. I want to know if there's some kind of a loophole in there, like if they are treating a hotel or your home time as a valid sleeper berth period. Personally, that makes sense to me because it shouldn't matter if you're getting your sleep in a hotel room or at your home or in a bunk. Especially when it comes to that second part where, any off-duty break of over 2 hours will give you some time back. So what's the difference? Okay, a driver pulls over in rush hour. He doesn't want to mess with rush hour, so he pulls over, he goes in, gets a meal, takes him 2 hours. It extends his day, and then he goes on. Okay, I'm taking a break, waiting on a load at my terminal. I'm having some food, and then I get my time back, and I move on. What's the difference? The only difference was my truck sitting out in the parking lot is a day cab. His truck sitting out in the parking lot is a sleeper berth. What's the difference? We both had a full good sleep before, and then we had the second part of the split sleeper berth. What's the difference? I don't get it. If I hear back that this is wrong, I've actually written to the FMCSA too to find out. And if I hear back from this that this is wrong and it's not allowed, I just may actually file one of those, not an exemption, that you can submit to the FMCSA. It wouldn't be an exemption, but maybe a rules clarification or a rules change. I don't know the proper procedure on that, but if I need to do this, I will walk you through the process, probably because this will probably take months and months to do, but I will probably do it because I just want the answer to it. And I think it's really stupid if you can't use it. I'm guessing because OmniTrax allows it and because my company allows it, that it is legal. I just don't know why. And I'm hoping one of you will be able to tell me why that is. So, wow, that went on way longer than I thought it was going to. That's are we 20 minutes in? Good grief. Well, this is going to be a mega episode, so I guess I will just get on with it. If you do have an answer for me, though, please email me, truckerdump@gmail.com. And if you've got sources to prove what you're saying, please send those along in the email. Okay, with that, let's get on with this freaking podcast because it's going to be huge. Well, as of a couple weeks ago, we have all switched to daylight savings time, except for Arizona and Hawaii, I believe. Well, there's an article about that over on landline.media. It's called Daylight Saving Time, Topic of Bills Across Country. Now, I thought this was going to be a really quick story and I'd just be able to smack it out pretty quick. And well, I am not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this article is a lot longer than I thought it was. Of course, we all have heard throughout the years that, there's people for getting rid of daylight savings time. There's people against it. There's been legislation in lots of states throughout the years. Just nobody can ever make a decision on anything except for Arizona and Hawaii, of course. But, yeah, this is way more involved than I thought it was. The reasoning behind keeping it, I'd always just heard it was because of the farmers, you need more daylight and they need more daylight to work, on their crops and stuff. But of course, that's not an issue nowadays with headlights on tractors and all of that stuff. You're still getting the same amount of sunlight, and it just doesn't matter if the farmers are out in the daylight trying to reap the crops, right? But anyway, this goes way beyond that. Like I said, I didn't know. They talk about how, changing the time zone can affect when kids are out for trying to catch the school bus in the morning. If they change this, it could be where they would be, in dark for much, much longer in the morning and, trying to meet the school bus and all that stuff. So there's that. They talk about risk factors for the road. The DOT doesn't like it. They don't want more dark hours because it says there's increase in crashes at that time, and not just with other vehicles, but with wildlife also. So there's that aspect of it. Anyway, like I said, this is just a lot deeper than I thought it was, honestly. If you were interested in this and what's going on, go over here to landline.media and check it out. Basically, what's happening right now is that the U.S. Senate has gotten a bipartisan group of 11 co-sponsors to try to get this thing passed where they are eliminating daylight saving time. Now, again, one of the issues is, do you get rid of daylight savings time and stay on standard, or do you get rid of standard and go to daylight savings times? There's arguments on both counts, but I am not going to go into those here. If you're interested in this, personally, I don't like changing clocks. And according to a study recently and some experts that were talking to Congress about this, they said that 75% of Americans do not want to change their clock twice a year. Now, of course, like I say, just figuring out which one to go with is the problem. Some states want to stay on daylight savings time. Some states want to go by standard time, and that is part of the problem. Everybody's just kind of waiting to see what the federal government does, because it would be much, much better if everyone was on one standard, right? Okay, well, go check this one out. If you have any interest in this kind of stuff whatsoever, it's over on landline.media. Well, here's one that came out of left field for me. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any idea about U.S. Xpress being in trouble. And of course, we're talking about Knight-Swift acquiring U.S. Xpress for more than $800 million, $808 million to be exact. Found this one on Commercial Carrier Journal, that's ccjdigital.com, although it is on every trucking website out there. So if you're in the trucking news at all, you're going to see it somewhere. So we've talked about Knight-Swift quite a bit recently, where we've talked about how they're expanding out and they're actually trying to get into the LTL industry. They bought a company called AAA Cooper, and there was another one called Midwest or something like that. But both of those were LTL based, and that was really what they've been focusing on lately. But they said when this opportunity for U.S. Xpress came up, they just couldn't pass on it, and they went ahead and bought it, thought it would fit nicely into their Knight-Swift truckload carrier stuff already. And that's probably true. The thing is, like I said, I didn't have any idea this was coming. I thought U.S. Xpress was a pretty top tier carrier. I guess I'm wrong about that. They were losing money pretty badly. Their stock price was pretty low. Had no clue. And now I had heard that their division called Variant, I think we talked about that here on the podcast. They had a division called Variant that was, it was more tech focused. They were trying to use technology to improve, their fuel efficiency and not their brokering, but the way they ran, basically their operations. They were trying to go high tech with it, and the Variant division was failing miserable. And I thought that's really what was bringing down U.S. Xpress, but apparently that is not the case. But regardless, I just found where this other LTO carrier, it was called Midwest Motor Express, and there was another one called Midnight Express that they purchased. So like I say, they've really been trying to expand into the LTL industry. But it doesn't look like anything is really going to change for U.S. Xpress. All their bigwigs are staying in place, most of them. But they're going to be folding into Knight Swift and having some synergy there. I don't like that word, but, they say they'll be able to consolidate a lot of their operations because they run a lot the same. Who knows? Probably get rid of some of their terminals, combine terminals where they have big terminals, where they can all fit into one terminal somewhere. So stuff like that. But anyway, they think it's going to be very successful for them, obviously, because they paid $808 million for it. And I actually read somewhere, I don't see it in this article, but it may be in here. But anyway, they say they paid like 300% more than what they were expecting to get out of it for the shareholders when they bought them out. That's crazy. Good for the shareholders, I guess, right? But anyway, don't expect U.S. Xpress trucks to go anywhere anytime soon. They are still going to continue to run them, just like you see Swift trucks and you still see Knight trucks. You will also still see the U.S. Xpress trucks. They will be running as U.S. Xpress. But just so you know, if you go to work for U.S. Xpress, you will be working for Knight Swift. Check this one out on ccjdigital.com or anywhere you get your trucking news. All right, let's stick with both Commercial Carrier Journal and U.S. Xpress for this one. This is a really neat article that you're going to want to go over and check out. Link in the show notes, of course. U.S. Xpress driver proves you don't have to be big to drive a big rig. So this tells the story of a gentleman named Joaquim Wangui. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Sorry, Mr. Joaquim. But he is a whopping 4 foot 2 inches tall. Yes, you heard that right. 4 feet 2 inches. That's why you have to go over here and look at the photos here. And he's also got some TikTok videos, some YouTube stuff where he's gotten millions of views. Because people want to see how someone that short can actually drive a truck. He has extensions, foot extensions, and he puts a pillow behind him on the seat. He says he's happy to show anybody his truck and how it's set up. When he runs into them in public, he takes pictures with drivers and everything. He actually does drive for the Variant fleet we were just talking about. That's that branch of U.S. Xpress. So they have been very accommodating to him. He said when he came over here about 6 years ago from Kenya, that he was just looking for something else to do. He said actually in Kenya, because of they have different accessibility rules over there and stuff, that he couldn't even drive a car over there because he was so short. But over here, there's no such restrictions as long as you can do the job. Welcome to America. Actually, although he says he's got millions of views on his videos of like him crawling up onto the catwalk to put his glad hands on, or there's one of him cranking the dolly, which is kind of funny. His head comes up to about the headlights on a Cascadia, it says. His head comes up to about the bottom of a trailer. That's how short he is. So he's out there cranking the dollies. Very popular videos. But he says his favorite video is the one where he is actually becoming a citizen of the United States. And he calls that the best day of his life. He says that video doesn't have many views, but he likes it. He's dressed in a suit, and he's holding an American flag, and he's dancing around to Alan Jackson's Little Man song. So he loves the video because he loves America, because guess what? He sees opportunity here. So any of you people who think the U.S. is some racist country, which, yes, racism does exist, but that your options are limited and you're held down. This is a 4'2" black man driving a semi truck down the road. And the funny thing is he was introduced into trucking, wasn't sure if he could do it, but he met another gentleman who was doing it by the name of Lorenzo Sampson. And he is also very short. There's a picture of him in there. They met through a group called Little People of America. Didn't even know that existed, but there you go. So, hey, where there's a will, there's a way. So if you are someone of smaller stature or even larger stature and you're thinking, I can't drive that 18-wheeler. Well, according to Mr. Joaquim, anyone can do it. He says, if I can drive an 18-wheeler, anybody can. So there you have it. You can go check out these photos on ccjdigital.com, or you can check him out online. His page, looks like his TikTok page, is Katuosis the Truck Guy. That's Katuosis, the Truck Guy. So go check this one out. And good for Mr. Joaquim. Boy, that picture of him sitting behind the wheel. It's amazing. It's amazing he can drive a truck. Good for you, man. All right, let's move on. Just found this one to be an interesting and inspiring story and thought you might enjoy it. All right, we all know that this economy sucks right now. Well, everyone except for Biden, who seems to think everything is just peachy and hunky-dory. Don't know where he's getting that one. But anyway, found this article over here on freightwaves.com. Decline in truck transportation jobs, third biggest in last decade. So we all know that you can get a trucking job pretty much anywhere nowadays. Some jobs are harder to find, Walmart jobs, certain LTL jobs, things like that. But in general, if you want a trucking job, you can find a trucking job. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics recently reported that the truck transportation sector saw a decline of 8,500 jobs in February. Now, that's nothing compared to back in 2020 when the pandemic hit and there was about 84,000 jobs lost. Well, not lost, but the demand for 84,000 jobs was not there like it had been before. And before that, the next biggest crash was way back in 2013, where they had, people weren't hiring as many truck drivers back in the day. But anyway, I'm just kind of put this out there just so you kind of a general idea of what's going on with the transportation industry when it comes to finding a job. And if you have tried to find a different trucking job and you haven't had much luck, don't necessarily look at that as just being, this is me, I can't get hired somewhere else or whatever. It's probably just a matter of the economy. And as soon as the economy picks back up, you will be just as marketable as you ever were in the first place. The trucking industry is going nowhere. It's still a good place to be if you want to always have a job. Now, it may not be your ideal job, but you're always going to pretty much have a job in the trucking industry. That's the way I always look at it. One of the perks of the trucking industry, job security. Check this one out, freightwaves.com, if you're interested in all of these numbers. There's a lot of numbers in this article. Okay, I know sometimes these surveys can be a little bit wonky, but I found this one kind of interesting. Freightwaves.com. Americans value truck parking facilities, but not in their backyards. Gee, what a surprise there. So this survey was done by Cloud Trucks, which is an IT-based provider that supports the commercial truck driving industry. So here's the skinny on this one. About 1,000 American adults were surveyed about the truck parking issue and about truck driving in general. About 56% of the respondents said they had no idea there was an issue with truck parking. 21% said they had no idea that many drivers end up sleeping in their vehicles. That seems odd. What do they think those big spaces are behind the driver's seat? Anyway, the public being clueless about trucking. Yeah, who knew? This survey also says that about 58% of them said that drivers were underpaid, and 50% said that commercial drivers are safer drivers than the public at large. Just 50%, realize that we're safer. Yeah, that's scary. Yeah. Unsurprising, though. They all think they're the good drivers and we suck at it. At least 50% of them think that anyway. But now back to the title of this article dealing with the truck parking. Once these participants were described what the problems were within the trucking industry, 86% of them recognized that truck parking is an important issue, and 95% supported the building of overnight parking facilities. But 80% of them said they'd only be supportive of those facilities if they were at least 3 miles from their house. Isn't that just typical? This reminds me of the old cell phone tower argument. Everybody wants cell phone towers everywhere so that we can have great signals, but nobody wants them in their backyard, right? Nobody wants the power lines in their backyard either, but everybody wants power everywhere. Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too sometimes. Anyway, These respondents also go on and say that 43% say they would support relaxed zoning and land use regulations that could pave the way for more parking. Approximately 40% supported tax incentives to truck stop operators and other private companies who create more parking. So like I said, they're all for it. Go truckers, just as long as it's not in my backyard. Ugh. Find this one on freightwaves.com. All right, let's head over to overdriveonline.com, where a safety coalition, the Truck Safety Coalition, to be specific, the TSC, is using the recent train crashes with the hazmat incidents to further their agenda. So this group is calling on the Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to prioritize truck safety measures in the wake of recent hazmat emergencies. So yeah, they're just saying that, with these train derailments and all the hazmat problems that came along with it, they just want to make sure that this does not happen in the trucking industry also. But really what they're trying to do is just push their agenda that they've always been pushing, which of course requires they want to make sure that all new trucks have automatic emergency braking systems on them. They want mandated speed limiters. Of course, those are two big things that they've really been pushing recently and are really going for this year in 2023. But here's a couple things else that I had not really heard of before, honestly. Well, one, they want to reinstitute the rulemaking requiring screening and the treatment of sleep apnea. So they want to make that a little bit more clear in the recent guidelines through the Federal Registry. Or not the registry, what am I thinking of? Well, the group of doctors, who do these exams, they release this paper every year, I guess, saying, what they recommend. And they just kind of took sleep apnea off the list. It's still an issue, but they're kind of leaving it up to the doctors and they're not setting as clear guidelines anymore. Well, they want to get those guidelines back. Another thing they're wanting to do, which this is a new one on me. They want to restore the 2011 hours of service rules. They want to go all the way back there. They want to require the 30-minute rest break after 8 hours of driving, to where that doesn't mean you can do it on duty anymore. I can't remember exactly what the 2011 rules were, but there was undoubtedly some more with that. Probably that split sleeper berth thing back then. Yeah, this is not good if they get all this stuff. Plus, another thing they want is something called the New Entrant Carrier Proficiency Exam. Now, I had never heard of this, so I had to Google it. Apparently, this is something that was being pushed back in 2009, where basically, if you're a new carrier, if you are new to the trucking industry, or you just bought your first truck or whatever, you would have to take a written exam that shows that you're proficient in running a business, a trucking business, meaning that you understand hazmat rules. You understand that you have to have certain permits and certain taxes apply to you, and all of those kinds of things. You have to be able to prove that you actually know what you're doing, shortly after getting your license to have your own business, basically. They also said there would be 180 days after you formed your business that you would be inspected by somebody, I don't know who, to see if you're compliant with all your safety issues and things like that. And if not, you would have to shut down or fix those issues immediately. Now, as far as I can tell, this never went into existence. I don't think anybody has to do this now. Let me know if you are a new owner operator. Did you have to fill out anything called a New Entrant Carrier Proficiency Exam? I don't think that exists. I don't think it ever passed. But anyway, they're trying to bring it back because, hey, yay for safety. So anyway, I just hate stuff like this, when organizations use some tragic event to their benefit to try to swing things their way. It seems like horrible abuse of their power, but whatever, shysters will be shysters. But hey, while you're on this webpage over here, you might want to scroll on down and check out another article. It's called DriveWise Adds Pennsylvania to Waste Station Bypass Network. Now, my friend driver Chris Mack says he recently switched from Prepass to DriveWise. This was not his choice. He really liked pre-pass because it was pretty much universal everywhere. DriveWise isn't up and coming. They've got a lot more. They've got about 46 of the states now, so they're pretty widespread, but not as good as the pre-pass quite yet. Chris does not like the DriveWise, but he stuck with it. That's what his company offers, and that's what he had to take. He's talking about how often he has to go into weigh stations now compared to when he had the pre-pass. But anyway, now Pennsylvania, at least you'll be able to, doesn't look like all of the journeys or all of the routes there, but most of them. So probably shortly this will, you'll be able to use your DriveWise everywhere and hopefully bypass those weigh stations. So there you have it, Chris. Some good news, if you're even listening. Remember, he's not a fan of the news format that we have now. I don't know how often he listens anymore. Anyway, check both of these articles out at the same link at overdriveonline.com. Well, we've talked about Kodiak Robotics quite a bit on the podcast, and, well, here's another episode with them in it. Found this one on thetrucker.com. This one involves Forward Air Kodiak Robotics operating a consistent autonomous trucking service between Dallas and Atlanta. So as a reminder, Kodiak Robotics is a self-driving trucking company, and, they work with big trucking companies, form alliances with them like this Forward Air one. They've also formed alliances with IKEA, Warner, US Xpress, 10 Roads Express, and Siva Logistics, just to name a few. But in this particular case, they are trying to run a route 3 times per week between Dallas and Atlanta, 24 hours per day, 6 days per week. They want to be able to show that this can be done consistently. Now, they say this is a prime candidate for this route is a prime candidate for their service because it is what they call a tweener lane, which I had never heard of, but they say it's long and it's difficult to staff. And I looked that up, and yeah, it is a 781 mile run. So it can't really be done in one shift by, well, I guess if you had a really, really, really fast truck, you might be able to pull that one off. But, there's not a lot of drivers who want to drive 781 miles in one day. So they're saying this is a perfect opportunity for their autonomous system. It can just run constantly without, 6 days straight without needing any rest or recalibration. So this is kind of another test bed for them. Now, I'm a little unclear on whether there is a driver present or not. This simply says, according to hours of service regulations, Kodiak's self-driving truck operates with a safety driver team overseeing the autonomous system. Now, I'm assuming that means they're in the truck, but I'm not exactly sure. I guess that could be remote, like, driving the truck remotely. I'm not really sure on that. I hate it when articles don't tell you stuff like that. Don't be vague. Tell us whether there's going to be a driver on board or not. I don't want to be driving along and look down and see a Forward Air truck and, they don't have a driver in the seat. But anyway, the chairman of Forward Air wanted to be sure and let everyone know that he is not planning on replacing all his owner-operators, as well as independent contractors with autonomous trucks. But there are certain lanes, he says, that it could certainly be utilized on, lanes that people don't want, especially like this one. So, interesting article here. Go check it out on thetrucker.com. Just more evidence that we're on our way to seeing more autonomous trucks on the road. Goody goody. All right, we'll touch on this next one just briefly. Freightwaves.com. UPS Teamsters expected to ink deal no later than June 30th. Now, their contract is due on August the 1st. The Teamster president says they will strike if they don't have a deal by July 31st. But there is a gentleman here from Ship Matrix Incorporated. They're a consulting group, and his name is Satish Jindal, I think is how you pronounce the name. I'm probably way off on that one too. But anyway, he is saying that this is not going to happen. Now, he's not just guessing, but he is the first consultant to actually come out and say, I don't think this is going to happen, the strike. They're going to resolve it not only on time, but actually about a month before it's due. He's saying June 30th, they're going to have this all figured out by then. Well, I hope so, because, there's been all kinds of articles and speculation on how they're going to cover that freight if UPS does shut down, because they are huge, and they're just not even sure there's enough companies that do that kind of work that can cover it. So let's just hope they get this sorted out ahead of time. Actually, I talked to a fellow Teamster of mine who is a UPS driver, and he says that this is a kind of a common thing, that they actually want to get these contracts closed a bit early. Now, I had not really thought about this, but he says typically you don't want to be pushing up until the last minute unless there's just so much contention between the two groups and they cannot agree on anything. You try to get these done earlier. And the reason you do that is because your customer base gets a little concerned. They don't want to send you a bunch of freight and, form long contracts with you and stuff like that if they think that their freight might get tied up in a strike somewhere. And that makes perfect sense. And he said they will start doing that about a couple of months out before. So he says really they need to, have something figured out by like May, honestly, if they don't want to lose any customers. And that's a big company like, UPS, who is probably going to get those customers back, even if they did have a strike. But you don't really want to go down that path where you're losing customers, especially in this environment with the economy the way it is. So anyway, let's just hope that Mr. Jindal is correct and we get this all settled by June 30th or earlier even. Stay tuned. Well, it's that time of the podcast where we complain about something that California is doing stupid again. It seems to be an every week thing, doesn't it? Found this one on thetrucker.com. But actually, this time it's not just California, it's possibly the White House. This one's called White House Reportedly Fast-Tracking California's Plans to Phase Out Diesel Engines. Now, I will point out ahead of time that this is just rumor. Some leaks got out saying that the White House was going to be allowing California to implement stricter rules than any of the rest of the country. Some of these rules, we're talking about, of course, emissions here and diesel-powered trucks and, getting them down to zero emissions and, having to buy more electric trucks and things like that. It's a whole thing we've talked about quite a bit here. Well, some of these things were already planning on going into effect in 2027 on the federal level, but California, of course, wants to jump the gun on this stuff, and they want to start implementing some of these rules in 2024. Yeah. In case you've lost track of time, it's 2023, so that's next year. Oh boy. Well, thankfully, the CEO of the American Trucking Association, Chris Spear, has weighed in on this. He wrote a letter to the White House saying, we've worked tirelessly with the EPA on aggressive, achievable timelines for emissions reductions over decades. In fact, a truck in 1988 emitted as much as 60 trucks today, a more than a 98% reduction, and we're committed to the path to zero. But he further states, if the reports are in fact accurate, let us remind you that this isn't the United States of California. Oh, I love that. And he goes on, as we learned in the pandemic, the supply chain can be a fragile thing and its integrity must be preserved at the national level. This decision has little to do with improving the environment and everything to do with placating the far left of the environmental lobby without regard for the hardworking men and women of our industry or our country who will be left to implement California's vision for America. Boy, that is well said. He also goes on to say that, California and the White House in general don't have any idea what kind of costs are involved with, designing, building, manufacturing these trucks. And, well, we know as truckers how often we are down for environmental issues, for something wrong with the diesel particulate filter or, back in the day with the EGR valves. And we were always down for that kind of stuff. So, we know what this causes, what kind of pain this causes, especially when they push the issue and manufacturers are just trying anything to figure out how to make their engines more clean and stuff like that. And usually there's just not enough testing time and they just kick it out in the market because they have to, because California's pushing this stuff, and then everything goes to hell in a handbasket. So hopefully this was just a rumor, but knowing the White House and knowing California, I would not be surprised at all if this is actually trying to be fast-tracked by the White House. Yeesh. California, what are you going to do? In related California news, let's head over to landline.media. Department of Labor nominee worst choice, Congressman says. All right, now this one is involving a lady named Julie Su. She is currently the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Labor, and she has been promoted by the White House to become the Labor Secretary. And we were talking about this on last episode, maybe the one before that, where she might not be a very good pick for this because, well, one, she's out of California, and, California's a mess, especially with the transportation industry. Now, Labor Department is just not just the transportation industry, but it does have a big part of that. And she was also a part of this Assembly Bill 5, which you know as AB 5, which basically eliminated, tens of thousands of jobs, for truckers who wanted to be independent contractors. Well, the congressman speaking out against her, saying she is possibly the worst choice available, is Kevin Kiley, I think is when you pronounce his name, Kiley. He's a Republican out of California, and he just goes on and on in this thing about how bad her tenure as California Labor Commissioner was. Here's a quote from him. He says, her tenure was one of the worst tenures I'm sure there has ever been for any position in our country's history. Wow. He says she completely failed to run the unemployment office in California in a way that gave people the benefits that they were entitled to when millions of people lost their jobs because of the COVID shutdowns. You had millions of people who got their checks late or had to wait weeks or months, or in some cases indefinitely. Close quote. Wow. And the article points out that according to the Sacramento Bee, the newspaper there, the COVID stuff was just riddled with fraud. They had about an estimated 20 billion of lost claims just in California alone. This was all under Julie Su's leadership. So like I said, Miss Julie Su, sorry, you are just not a good candidate for this position. I don't think we're going to have any say-so in the matter. They will go probably before some committee in Congress, and they will look them over, and hopefully they will strike this down. And hopefully this gentleman from California will sit on that, on that board and question her a lot about this stuff. Man, I hope this doesn't happen. Sorry, Julie Su, but we don't want you in there. Move on with your life or stay in California, please. For all the details on this one, head on over to landline.media. Hey, here's an interesting story I found over at Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. Tire sustainability remains top priority for industry. Okay, I admit it doesn't sound all that exciting, but it's a pretty darn good article and something, quite honestly, I just really hadn't thought about much. So here is the problem. Tires can only be used so long. Of course, we all know about recaps and how, once a tire tread goes down, they can turn it back in, they can put some new tread on it and, use that again. But they can only do that for so long. Eventually, those tires are going to reach end of life. And what are you going to do with them? Well, according to this article, in 1990, the EPA estimated there were over 1 billion scrap tires in illegal sites. But the good news is, as of 2021, there are fewer than 50 million in locations like that are hidden away. Now, we've all seen those. When I was a kid, I remember going to scrapyards and stuff and actually crawling on these piles of tires and, having a good time out of it. But that's really not a good thing for all those tires just to be sitting there. And of course, we all know about people burning tires back in the day too, which is, of course, really bad for the environment. So what they do with them now is mainly just ground them up, use them for, they're trying to use them more for like asphalt type, to build roads with them and stuff like that. It's a pretty inexpensive way to do that. And like I said, there's just all kinds of stuff in here. about, the sustainability of tires. That's about all I'm really going to go into it. I just wanted to let you know that, hey, that is a problem. I never thought about it before, and I thought, well, maybe you haven't either. And if you're interested in this stuff, head on over. Transport Topics, ttnews.com. All right, let's head on over to ccjdigital.com. That's Commercial Carrier Journal for this look into the future. This one's called Texas-based project would give freight trucks priority at red lights. Okay, this sounds really awesome, of course, but this is just a concept at this point. There is nothing, it's going to be a long time before any of this is implemented, but it looks like the system that they're having here can tie into current systems that we have for determining, when traffic moves at stoplights and stuff like that. So, well, I guess I should step back and really explain what's going on here. Basically, they're saying for every 5,000 freight stops that can be eliminated at traffic lights each day, fleets can save 3,800 minutes in travel time, $1,500 in fuel and operational costs, 4 miles per gallon in fuel efficiency, and 1,300 kilograms of emissions. So basically, they're just trying to make things more efficient for trucks at stoplights. Now, the idea behind this is you would register to be a part of this system, and then you would have some kind of a device on your truck that would let the traffic signal basically know, hey, I'm coming, I'm almost there, hang on to that green light just a little bit longer. And also, if you're sitting at a light that's red, it would know you're there, and it would make the red light just a little bit shorter. Now, that's an interesting concept. I don't know how it would really work. How many times have you shown up at an intersection and there's trucks at all four corners? Yeah, I don't know. I guess it would just weigh at that point, right, to the right goes first, like normal, I guess. I don't really know. But this is an interesting concept. If it can save a trucker's time, of course, it would also save on a lot of those brake checks and stuff like that, where you're coming up on a stoplight and you think, well, I got enough time, it's going to stay green. And then it turns on you all of a sudden and you hit the brakes really hard. Freight goes everywhere. If you've got a dash cam, it starts recording, and next thing you know, you're sitting in a safety office talking to your safety director about why you locked up the brakes. Yeah. We've all been there, right? Well, anyway, this is just an interesting concept. If you want to read more about it, head on over here to ccjdigital.com. Did I say that right? ccjdigital.com. Slow down, Todd. No hurry here. Actually, there is a hurry, because if I can get this done in time, I'm going over to Chick-fil-A before I go to work. Onward. Man, oh man, boy, have we got a lot of truck stop news. First off, let's just go ahead and get 3 drinks out of the way, because Love's has opened 3 new truck stops in Florida, Texas, and Indiana. And they've reopened another one that had been closed for fire. So, I don't know, half a shot? So anyway, the one that caught on fire, you might remember, was in Gary, Indiana. And honestly, it was not one of their better ones. So thankfully, they have demolished it. They rebuilt it from the ground up. They've got a Naf Middle Eastern grill in there. There's about 154 parking spaces. So that is welcome news, because as we all know, parking is hard to find in the Chicago area. And, well, without that truck stop open, that just made the problem even worse. As for the new ones, there's 3 of them, and shame on CDLLife.com for not giving me mile markers on these. Not cool. You talk about all their amenities and stuff like that, but you don't give me a mile marker. I had to actually go look them up myself in my Loves app. Not cool, man. By the way, all of these truck stop articles are on CDLLife.com if I didn't mention that earlier. Okay, so the first one they talk about is Jacksonville, Florida. That one is on I-295 at exit 33. There's 93 parking spaces and a Bojangles. Love me some Bojangles. That's some good stuff, especially those morning muffins. Or not muffins. What are they? They're not muffins. They're biscuits. Yeah, they're cinnamon biscuits. And they used to have a blueberry one. I don't know if they still do or not, but that blueberry one. Cinnamon. Either one. I'll take either one. There's another truck stop in New Boston, Texas. This one you will find on I-30 at exit 199. This one's got 86 truck parking spaces and an Arby's. And the last one mentioned here is Lafayette, Indiana. This one I actually drove past last night on my way from Milwaukee to Dayton, and I looked over and thought, hey, where'd that come from? Well, it's on I-65, exit 175. This one lists 64 truck parking spaces and a Hardee's restaurant. And I don't know for sure, but that Hardee's actually looked like it was open in the middle of the night. Now, I know sometimes that can be deceiving. I pulled into a couple of truck stops the other night. Everything was all lit up, all the road signs, all of the lights over the fuel bays and everything. But I went in and neither one of them were open. I'm like, that's the whole entire truck stop. Now, not a national chain, but just a couple of truck stops that looked like they were open. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what the heck? Pulled off the road for this. Turn off your dang lights, people. All right, what else here? So looking down through here, it looks like I missed something. All of these new facilities will have Speedco, so you can get your truck fixed there, tires, oil change, all that stuff while you're there. The Speedco is opening April 3rd in Lafayette, but it looks like summer of 2023 for the Gary, Indiana one, but the rest of it's open. Oh, look, also Gary, Indiana has Godfather's Pizza in addition to the Naf Naf restaurant if you're not into Middle Eastern cuisine, which I walked in there, didn't recognize anything on the menu except for maybe a falafel, but I don't even know what that is, but I recognize the word at least. So, yeah, I'm not very adventurous with my food, but if you like that kind of stuff, have at it. If not, go for Godfather's Pizza. That's always good. Next up is a new TA Xpress opening up in Tennessee. This is in Cookeville, Tennessee, I-40 exit 288. Looks like it's not going to be a huge one like most Expresses aren't. 59 truck parking spaces. It's going to have a Hardee's, a Sbarro, and an El Tapatio. El Tapatio Fresh Mex restaurant, which I've never heard of, but hey, Mexican, I'll take it. Looks like a little strip mall, honestly, from the picture here. But hey, any new truck stops are good truck stops, right? And the last truck stop news we have for today comes as a bit of a surprise, honestly. You know that TA in downtown Nashville, the one that kind of sits down in a hole, it has a tendency to get flooded. It's not a very good neighborhood. Well, it is closing as of March 31st. Now, while I don't think anybody really will miss this truck stop that much, it did have 167 truck parking spaces right in downtown Nashville. Now, actually getting one of those 167 truck parking spaces in the middle of the night is next to impossible, but hey, at least it was an option. Well, it is at least until March 31st. In my opinion, and in the words of my ex-coworker, John Holsing, good riddance. Yeah, he got in there one night and we were chatting on the phone at the time and he couldn't figure his way out. And he's an experienced truck driver, but he was just driving around trying to figure it out. Everybody was parked every place. He couldn't find the exit. Yeah, that place is a mess. I hadn't been there in ages. Last time I went in there with the evil overlord and she said never again. So naturally we didn't go because I obey orders because I'm smart. All right. That'll do it for truck stop news, but we got one more story I wanted to add on here, and that comes from freightwaves.com. Robotics firm Mugen unveils automated unloader at ProMat. Now, ProMat is some kind of big convention where they, talking about manufacturing, supply chain stuff, and I guess Mugen, I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, it's Mujin. They make automated machines for manufacturing facilities and warehouses. They use, like they've got one that's uses suction cups and grippers for the sides of box to unload almost entire pallets at once. Or, like they can take one layer of it and just move it off onto another pallet or things like that. Well, this new thing they have is called the TruckBot, and it states it can unload cases up to 1,000 cases per hour. Now, it's got a video on here, but quite honestly, it's a little disappointing, and that makes me wonder how good the system actually is, because if you had something that worked this great, wouldn't you want a video explaining it really well and showing it in action? Well, this is a 15-second video is all it is, and it barely shows the thing in action at all. So I don't know. They're supposedly going to be showing this off at this chromat. Well, sounds like they already did show it off. So, well, I'm not going to any trucking shows, but it would be interesting to know. Now, this uses a combination of like a remote control to kind of get it started. This is the way it looks like anyway. Hard to tell here, but it looks like it's kind of like a remote control to kind of get the thing started, and it'll go in there and choose a box, and eventually it will learn how things are stacked, and it will be able to rip those things off there at 1,000 feet, or not 1,000 feet per second. What am I going with that? 1,000 boxes per hour. Now, of course, these boxes are all nicely stacked in there. They are not perfect, so that's good to know, because Lord knows we don't often get loads that ride all that well, and they're usually moved around a bit. So if this thing can't accommodate for that, it's pretty much useless. But anyway, I just thought this was an interesting little video to go watch. Like I said, it's super, super short, but here we go with more ways to unload freight quickly. If you remember right in the last episode, I think it was, we talked about ArcBest, who is best known for ABF Freight. I guess ABF Freight is a redundancy, isn't it? Since it stands for Arkansas Best Freight. Yeah. It's like saying Arkansas Best Freight. No, don't want to do that. All right. So anyway, they released that platform recently where you can just grab the whole platform and drag it out on the dock, send the driver on its way, and they can unload it at their leisure. Great idea. For the record, I talked to someone high up in my company, and they were aware of this, and they said that they're already using about 50% of their truckload facilities over there. Not their LTL stuff yet, but their truckload facilities. That's very interesting. Supposedly it's working really, really well for them. So good for them. And, well, hopefully this works too. Although, in one-way technology like this is great, because it saves wear and tear on a worker who's going to be in there handling all those 1,000 cases an hour. But at the same time, those are jobs that people could have. And sometimes people don't have a great education, or they don't have the ability to do other jobs, other than manual labor like this. And, well, that's a job they could be doing that a robot is taking away. But hey, this is the future, is it not? Everything's going to be more automated. They're going to try to, well, it would cut down on injuries probably at the workplace for sure. I guess we'll just keep an eye on this and see how well it goes. And if you ever run into one of these in the wild out of a warehouse, have a look at it and see how it works. Pretty cool. If you're interested in this one, head over to freightwaves.com. So that will do it for the news this time around. No Trucker Grub segment this time around. If you have a favorite place to eat that you can get to in your truck or close by, a little walk from your truck, let me know about it. In case you're new to the show, this is audio only, so I want to hear about this restaurant in your voice. All you have to do, open up your phone. There's probably some kind of a voice memo app on there. I know there is iPhone. I'm guessing there is Android also. Just tap that button, record right into it, about 3 minutes or less. Just tell me about the restaurant, where it's at, where you park, what kind of an atmosphere they have, what are the prices like, what's your favorite meal, what kind of food they serve, all that stuff, and send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. If you got any questions about that recording crap, just send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com, and I'll help you out. But while there is no good place to eat, you have not let me down in the feedback department. Let's get on with that.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, let's start out with a humdinger here. Haven't had one on 4 reasons that truckers might be tailgating you in quite a while. That's because most of them are irate. And, well, got another one here. I'm going to have to change some of the wording on it because there's lots of cursing in it, but I'll do the best I can. I can't even say the name of the person who sent this because it's a cuss word. It's an F-bomb. So, okay, let's not go there. All right, here we go. And this is in kind of one long sentence, so we'll just go with it and see what we can come up with. It's probably not going to make much sense, but I like to read these even though they're irate. But hey, everybody gets a voice on the Trucker Dump podcast, at least until I can't keep up with feedback anymore, which is probably never going to happen. Anyway, he writes, the blankety blank truckers on the Dukes Highway. I think that's in, I don't know, is that in Canada? He seems to be from Canada. He lists kilometers. Anyway, the blankety blank truckers on the Dukes Highway that sit 1 or 2 meters behind a slower vehicle need to get a clucking life. Your blatant harassment of drivers that have a legal right to be on the road is actually a criminal act. Pull your combined heads and grow up. There are speed restrictions on every road in every country. It may be cars sitting 20 kilometers under the speed limit. It may be roadworks. It could be road conditions or other conditions you cannot be aware of. Just pull your clucking heads in. You won't get to your destination any quicker, and perhaps harassing people will slow you down even further. I drove rigs for years across this country and have never seen so many arsehole cowboys that are supposed to be professional drivers. You childish, impatient pieces of poop give the industry a bad name. Wow. You know, I know this guy who calls himself F something, said he never tailgates, but with a rage issue like this, I think he might. Every now and then, maybe. But even if he doesn't, well, good for you, man. You're way better than the rest of us. You know, I recently saw a meme that was very good, and it showed a car that had one person behind it. And it said, if this is a scenario, the person in the back is probably at fault. Okay, that makes sense. Then the next scenario showed a long line of cars, and it said, if this is a scenario, the person in the front is probably the problem. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You know, if you've got a lot of people piling up behind you, you're probably going too dang slow. Get over at least in the right-hand lane, because if you're in the right-hand lane, nobody's going to be tailgating you. They're going to get in the left-hand lane and go around. Well, ideally, unless, of course, you get some jerk trucker or jerk car who just wants to tailgate you for being a jerk, because jerks exist. Anyway, thank you, F-bomb guy, for sending this in. I really appreciate it. All right, how about some follow-up from some past stories? First, we've got Maverick from over in the Trucker Dump Slack group. For the record, if you want to join that group, you can just email me at truckerdump@gmail.com. This is a private group. You'll get an invitation. You can get in there with a bunch of experienced drivers, a lot of newbies in there too. So if you're new, that's a great place to be. A lot of experienced drivers to, you can pick their brains and stuff like that. So Maverick writes in here, he says, another call out to Trucker Dump 191 and how we were talking about the best fleets to drive for and those lists, and I was questioning the lists and where they come up with the criteria to choose these best fleets to drive for. Well, Maverick writes, I've had the privilege in the past, privilege is in air quotes, I've had the privilege in the past to drive for one of these fleets. For many years, we were an honorable mention. But amazingly, the year that the safety department decided to start using Carrier's Edge as their training platform, that year we became one of the best fleets to drive for. Carrier's Edge being the sponsor of the best fleets to drive for. I'm sure the sales department has no bearing on the rankings whatsoever. Yeah, I'm sure they don't. He said the fleet has also won Volvo Top Carrier of the Year. Again, this came in a year when the company ordered 1,500 tractors from Volvo. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Thanks for the insight there, Maverick. Yeah. I've always just been skeptical of those best of fleets. Better to go out in the system yourself and find drivers who work for these companies if you can and talk to them and get the real skinny on what these jobs are like. Anyway, at least the top fleets, maybe they'd give you a good place to start, but I don't even know about that. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about here is how, I believe it's the last episode there was a news story about how drivers wanted praise above all else at their jobs. This was a survey done, so, don't take it as gospel. And I was questioning, and like, really? Does drivers really want praise above everything else? Of course, pay came in pretty close behind that and home time, things like that. But praise was number one? Really? Well, Okay. These comments from the Trucker Dump Slack group kind of back me up on this one. First, one of a kind, who is, now we know, Vicky. She writes, to me, praise is just them not talking to me. I figure if I hear nothing from management or dispatch, I'm doing a good job. Yeah, well, that's one way to look at it, Vicky. A Goose writes, in my opinion, praise is not really required for me, but some level of appreciation is. I've worked for medium-sized companies that you just basically blend into the background unless you screw up, and then you get contacted by management. He says, as one of a kind said, if you hear nothing, you're doing okay. My last couple of jobs have been with small family companies, usually dealing directly with the company owner. Sometimes it can feel like you're being taken advantage of because you go above and beyond for the company and hear nothing. And then it becomes expected all the time. But you want to get home early for something and it's met with grumbles and groans. In a small company setting, it takes very little for the boss to say, thanks for that, or good job when you go out of your way to get things done. And that's about all the praise I need. I once had a driver call up and tell my boss I had done an excellent job negotiating a B double through a particularly tight area in Melbourne, and it just felt weird. And then they asked me how much it cost to get someone to call and say that. Yeah, checks in the mail. Unfortunately, the generations coming through seem to have been rewarded for mediocrity while growing up, and now need a medal and award ceremony for doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think we'll be heading into some interesting times. Yeah, well, that is probably, I never really thought about that, but that is a perfect outcome of what happens when you give everyone a trophy for participating. Now, all of a sudden, they're just a mediocre employee and you're expected to be like, oh, you're so awesome. Thank you. Pat on the back. Attaboy. Yeah. Well, thank you for that bit of insight from Goose and Vicky and Maverick. Appreciate that. If you haven't figured it out, if you're in that group and you put something in there, I may use it. If it's anything sensitive, I will hold out on that probably, or I will ask you in advance if you are okay with me sharing a story. And actually, we have that exact scenario right at the end of the podcast here. Hang on for that. But first, Driver Dave writes, hello, Todd. You said you liked audio, so audio is coming at you. You'll notice that no cartoon characters were harmed or otherwise inconvenienced in the making of this audio clip. All right, let's hear from Driver Dave. What do you got for me?
Hello, Todd, with 2 Ds, 2 Cs, and 2 Ns, and all trucker dumpers. Driver Dave here. So I went back and listened to some back issues there. I guess I missed some. And I'm not sure which one it was, but you were talking about, somebody was talking about the COVID mandates and the masks and all that stuff, and at the border. And you said something about the CBP, meaning indicating they were the Canadian Border Patrol.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I don't think so. CBP is, if you ever flip the border and go back into the States, you ask the guys on the U.S. side there, just pull up to the booth and ask them if they work for the Canadian Border Patrol. I would love to see the reaction, hear about it. CBP is Customs and Border Protection. Okay. The Canuck version is CBSA, that's Canadian Border Services Agency. Mm-hmm. Different sides of the border. Just thought I'd bring that up.
All right.
That's funny.
Yes, that is funny. And for the record, I will point out that I did not say I knew what CBP stood for. I just was guessing. And I thought I made that pretty clear. But hey, wouldn't be the first time I got something wrong on the podcast. And thank you, Driver Dave, for writing it to let me know what it actually stands for. This is why I need people writing in to correct me all the time. Anyway, carry on, Dave.
So, yeah, I was also listening to the one about One of a Kind, about her incredible truck fiasco. Wow. All I can say is she is more patient than I am. I would have given it to about the fifth or sixth incident, and then I would have said, what she said at the end, fix the truck, new truck, or history.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a divorce. Yeah, I wouldn't have put up with that.
Well, just to give you a quick update, One of a Kind's patience did wear thin. She has found a new job. She writes in the Trucker Dump Slack group, I think I found my unicorn. 3 states, Arizona, California, and Nevada. Hey, I said it right. 2,000 to 2,500 miles a week, home weekly. I'll fly back to Stockton and give a week's notice. Return my truck to a terminal and then fly off to St. Louis for orientation. Let's hope it's as promising as it sounds. If not, well, I know how to find a job. LOL. Yeah. That's kind of the way it is with a new job, isn't it? You do the best you can and then you cross your fingers, hop on a bus or a plane or whatever, go and find out if they've been lying to you all along. Yeah. Sad that's the way our industry works, but there you have it. So anyway, let's continue on with what Driver Dave has to say.
Go on here a little bit. You were talking about there's an epidemic of parking on the side of the road, and yeah, it sure is. I don't know what's going on with these people. I don't know if they're coming from offshore or what, but it's just crazy. It's dangerous out there. I mean, I got a speed limited truck, and for me to get over, that's fine. I'll get over if I can. But, you know, if you're in the granny lane doing 64 mile an hour and you got some guy stuffing it down the middle lane at 70 or 75, and you got even a bear on the side, or, you know, today I couldn't get over. There's a bear there. He didn't have his discos on. He just had the 4-ways, and I didn't come up to him, and I didn't know it was a state trooper until I got there. Oops. All I could do was hit the brakes.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot of big trucks on the side that do not need to be there, and they can't be all broke down. So I don't know how we're going to fix that. Anyway, thanks again for the podcast, and appreciate it. Keep your stick on the ice here. Roger Beep, Driver Dave.
Well, thank you, Driver Dave. I'll try to keep my stick on the ice. There's something new with you every time, isn't there? Although I do have to admit that I was not even sure this was an authentic Driver Dave audio comment because there was no reference of any cartoon characters whatsoever. So if you're an imposter, thank you for the audio comment. I do appreciate it. If you're Driver Dave, I expect more next time. Come on. You got to have at least one Bugs Bunny reference, don't you? All right. And let's finish up with a comment from Kevin, who goes by Northern Crummy in the Trucker Dump Slack group. By the way, I've got a couple more comments from Sean and another Sean. We'll hear from them next week. So stay tuned for that, dudes. So I don't usually like to end the show on a down note and a bummer, but I'm going to do it because this is an important message here. This comes from Kevin, who goes by Northern Crummy in the Trucker Dump Slack group. He's from Alaska. Well, he's not from Alaska, but he lives in Alaska. He drives a heavy recovery vehicle up there, what we know as a tow truck. And so he encounters all sorts of mishaps up there. So anyway, he writes, don't know who or if anyone needs to hear this, but always remember that things can get better. Yesterday, I recovered a truck from Mackey Hill on the Dalton Highway. The driver was on his first trip after a 10-plus year hiatus from the haul road and probably wasn't qualified to be there. He spun out on Mackey and then proceeded to destroy the road, chains, and tires, eventually ending up with the trailer in the ditch. Later in the afternoon, the state came along with a road grader and tried to help him out, but he was in such a fit of rage that he couldn't coordinate with the pull, so they couldn't get him going. There's no cell service in the area, so communication is limited, but the owner of the truck got word of the situation later and coordinated a tow. Later that night, the owner got word that the driver seemed to be missing, so he had a passing truck stop to check on the truck. Turns out the driver had given up, went into the sleeper, and shot himself in the head. Ugh. I went and got the truck after the troopers got done doing their thing. Who knows what all the guy was going through, but we all know he was broke and desperate for a job, and after he destroyed everything, probably knew he was to be fired on his first day. Even when a guy is in a tough, desperate situation, always remember that things can and will get better, and don't be afraid to reach out for help. Family, friends, or even a bunch of truckers in a Slack group can and will be there for you. Man, I told you it was bad. That's a bad way to end the show, but it's very true what Kevin says. Things look so bad sometimes. I mean, look at One of a Kind situation with all of those breakdowns and everything. You just think your life sucks. What have you done wrong? Why does God hate you? All of those things. But, you know, it's always going to get better. Look at one of a kind. She's over there going for a new job now. And eventually her turmoil did end. Unfortunately, this gentleman won't be coming back. Boy, that's sad, sad news that you're so stressed about a job and money that you're willing to end your life. Don't be that way, please. If you need help, there's all kinds of suicide hotlines, that kind of thing. If you're just down in the dumps, there's all kinds of people that can help. And again, the Trucker Dump Slack group, like Kevin said, is a great place. Bunch of cheerful people in there. We're not a bad place like Facebook or Twitter that's going to dog on you. If you come in there with a problem, we're going to try to help you. Everybody's friendly in there. We all chat and just have a good time. And maybe that's just what you need. Some friends. And the Trucker Dump Slack group can provide that for you. Please get some help if you need help. And I hate to turn this into an ad for the Trucker Dump Slack group, but yeah, if you want to join that, please do so. truckerdump@gmail.com. Just send me that little email saying, please give me an invitation to the Slack group and I'll get you added in there. So again, I really hate leaving shows on a bummer like that, but life is important. And it is valuable, and please don't waste it, okay? All right, let's crank up the tunes and get on out of here. Okay, here's a quick reminder that I'm always looking for people willing to contribute to the show, whether that be giving me feedback on a news story like Vicky, Goose, or Maverick did this episode, or asking a question, giving constructive criticism, telling a story about something that happened to you, or submitting an audio comment for the Trucker Grub segment. Whatever it may be, I want to hear from you. Of course, audio clips always take priority, but I'll take a regular old email if you're a giant chicken butt like old Sean from a few episodes ago. Whatever you decide, drop it in an email and send it to truckerdump@gmail.com. Obviously, thank you for listening and following the podcast. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Trucker Dump, episode 191. 190 what? All right, let's head over to overdriveonline.com, where a safety group is using the recent trail crashes. Big emergencies with this hazmat thing wreaked all sorts of havoc and havoc. Okay, now this is regarding Zuli Sue. If you think back to the last episode or possibly the one before that, we were talking about the Labor Department finding one of those. Actually getting one of those kablooey